Šajā brīdī mēs runājam par Skotu Cohenu. Skots Cohens ir ieradies, un mēs viņu aicinām uz skatuves ar lekciju Nākotne nav tāda, kā bijusi, jeb The future is not how it used to be. Scott, please, welcome. The stage is yours.
Oh, hello. Thank you.
Hello.
Dāmas un kungi, Skots Cohens.
Thanks, everyone. They've only given me 30 minutes, and in the 30 minutes I have to talk, I have to convince every single one of you that one day you will be a cyborg. Do you know what a cyborg is? We'll get to that. But trust me, you might think I'm crazy now, but at the end of this, I hope you agree that you'll become a cyborg. You might not look exactly like that, though. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So back in 1995, I met this guy, Richard Gotterer, in New York City. I'm from New York. And he was a famous record producer. He produced, do you know bands like Blondie? Have you ever heard of Blondie? Yeah. Well, that's him. And he and I decided we were going to start a record company. And the idea was, he had started another company called Sire Records back in the past. Has anyone ever heard of Sire Records? No? Well, I was really excited that he wanted to start a record company with me because he had started this other company called Sire Records. Do you know any of these artists? Anyone ever heard of any of them? Usually around the M. Do you know that girl, Madonna? So that was his record company. So I'm super excited because I didn't know anything about the music business. I didn't know how to run a record company, but he did. So we started our record company because this was going to be the easiest way ever for me to make money, teaming up with Richard Gotterer. So in this building in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, we started our record company called Soul 3 Records. Sadly, it became apparent that not only did I not know how to run a record company, my business partner, Richard Gotterer, who's a dear friend of mine, he didn't know how to run a record company either. See, he had started Sire Records, but never ran the company. So he thought I knew what I was doing, and it turned out neither of us knew anything about running a record company, and we started calling our record company Sold 3 Records because that's the best we could do. We were probably the worst record company on the planet, and our dreams of making lots of money instead made us incredibly poor. I had lost everything in this venture to start a record company. But then I got interested in some new technology. The year was 1995, and this crazy thing called the World Wide Web had launched. And we thought, all right, out of desperation, we can use this. But you have to remember what the web was back in 1995. These are the computers you had to use. Do you remember these? Maybe you've seen them in your parents' garage. They're saving them because maybe one day they'll be able to use it again. But screens kind of look like this. Does this ring a bell for anyone? And if you wanted to connect to the internet, you needed one of those. Do you remember the modems? They worked really well as long as nobody picked up the phone and ruined your connection. But before you could even use that, you had to put those little diskettes in the computer to load the program on it. You know, put in disk 2 of 6, and that's how we all connected. And if we were lucky, you saw this symbol, and you waited and waited for the connection. And then magically, boom, you've got mail. So that was the web. And what we thought we would do was start to use this for our business. So we hired a bunch of interns from New York University, NYU. We didn't pay them any money. They were free because we'd already spent all our money, so we couldn't pay them. But we told them they could get in the music business and work at a record company. And their job was to get in front of one of those old computers, connect to the internet, and then they would go into message boards where people were talking about music. Because you have to remember what the internet was in 1995. There were no photos or videos. There was no music. It was just people typing things. You know, maybe once in a while there would be a photo. You know, it would be like tick, 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 tick. Maybe after 30 minutes you'd be like, oh, I think it's a bald guy. Tick. And then finally you'd get the photo. But mostly it was just text. So then, all of a sudden, we had this idea. We would go into message boards where people were talking about music. And if they were talking about music that was similar to any of the bands that were on our record company, we would send them a message. You could click on their username, and then they would get a message in their inbox. You've got mail. Well, this was 1995. The message that we sent those people was often the first email that they ever received. So what did they do? They responded. They responded by saying, thank you for sending me an email. What world do we live in today? So some stranger would send them a message and go, hey, if you like this band, check out one of ours. And sure enough, they'd say thank you, and they would send us a check in the mail so that we could ship them a CD. Fucking crazy world. Well, this got us thinking, all right, if this is how we're having trouble in the music industry, and this is how we're communicating to people, I bet you lots of people would be interested in this. So back in that building where we started Soul 3 Records, which happened to be on the Lower East Side of Manhattan on Orchard Street, 45 Orchard Street, we started a company called The Orchard. And The Orchard is now 20 years old, and it was the first ever digital distribution company. We took music, and from artists and record companies, and we put it in the places where people buy music. So today, that would be Spotify. Does everyone know Spotify? Yeah? Spotify, remember iTunes? That thing, yeah. And Apple Music and Amazon and YouTube. So we opened a company, and we would supply the companies back in the 90s that did this. And I was super excited. So in 1998, the year after we started the company, I get invited to Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm going to go speak at a conference there. And it's a music industry event. And I'm really excited because this thing had just launched. Does anyone know what it is? This is the Diamond Rio player. It was the first ever MP3 player. And it was launched on September 15th, 1998. So an amazing piece of technology. It had 32 megs of RAM, of storage, the hard drive on it. You could store 30 songs, because songs were 1 meg each. And it had this digital display. And it would display the track number. That's it, just the track number, 22. But at the moment, that was state-of-the-art technology. You could actually take music off of the computer, because before 1998, whatever was on the computer stayed on the computer. And for the first time ever, you could put it onto a device. Exciting times. Sadly, the music industry didn't think it was that exciting. They sued this company and said it was an illegal device. You can't use it. Diamond Rio ultimately won the court case, but it cost them so much to defend it, they went bankrupt. So in any case, I go to this conference, I'm so excited about speaking about the digital future, and the music industry is yelling at me. They're screaming, you're a pirate, this is the worst thing ever. People want records, they don't want digital music, they want to hold things in their hands. I didn't know what to do. I thought the future was going to be digital, but it turned out it was a lot harder than I thought. As I'm telling people from 1995 that it's going to be all digital, CD sales went up. And then they went up again in 1996 and 97 and 98 and 99. CD sales are continuing through the roof, and I'm telling people that everything is going to go digital. So it wasn't until 2000 that things started to go the other way. But in the meantime, I'd lost all my money in the record company, so I had no cash. I lost all my possessions. I lost my house, my apartment, my car. I had nothing. I owed $3 million. It's not like I took investors in and then they invested $3 million. No, I owed people $3 million. I owed every artist, every record label. I owed the landlord rent. I owed the tax authority, the IRS. And if they caught me, they would put me in jail for tax evasion. Life was spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, we have industry magazines like Billboard writing articles about how amazing the digital future is, and this company is doing it. And I was homeless. I was living in my office. Thankfully, this guy came along in 2003, April 2003. Do you know him? Steve Jobs, iTunes. Finally, he came in and proved what we had been doing for the last 8 years, that actually there was a market for digital music. People would jump on this. So I was able to finally get an apartment again, pay my bills. That was quite an amazing accomplishment, paying back everyone that we owed money to, $3 million worth. And now our company has grown into an enormous company. I think we have offices in 30 countries around the world. We're the largest distributor of music globally. And then a couple of years ago, we sold it to Sony. You guys know Sony Music? So now Sony owns my company, The Orchard, and they paid a nice sum for it. So I'm definitely not homeless anymore, and drinks on me at the bar tonight. Woo! So what does this have to do with cyborgism? Remember, we're going to talk about being cyborgs. Well, I think you can learn a few things from my story. The first is perseverance. A word in America we call grit. That determination that you're going to fight through things even when it's not easy. I mean, do you think it was easy owing that much money and being homeless? But when you believe you're right, when you're onto something, you have to fight through it. It's not like a Hollywood movie where, hey, I have an idea for a company and I'll do it, and then I'll make money, and then everyone will be happy, and I'll make more money, and life will be great. It never works that way. You have an idea for something, you try and do it, and then everyone tells you why you're wrong, why it can't work. And oftentimes they're right at first. But you have to have that grit, that perseverance to fight through it. The second thing I think you can learn is that you need to take risk. You have to risk things in life. When I was growing up, and I got this advice about when I'm older, I can either take the safe path or the risky path. I'm sure lots of you have heard the same thing. Why take a risk? Get a good job. Work for our bank or the government. This is the safe path. Don't risk it and be an entrepreneur or an artist, a graphic designer. These are risky things to do in life. And then something happened. A few years ago, I mean, I'm 52 years old now, and I started looking at my friends that were in their 40s and 50s, and they were losing their jobs. These were people that were educated, went to university, got their MBA. They were vice presidents of companies, and then they were being fired. And guess what? Nobody wanted to hire a 50-year-old man. Why would they? I have young kids. They grew up with the internet. They're digitally competent. Why would I want an old guy? All of a sudden, I'm looking at all my friends, And either they lost their job or they're scared shitless that they're about to because they have a family, a mortgage, a car, children going to university that they can't afford to pay. And then I looked at my other friends, the ones that took the risky path, the ones that were the artists, the designers, the musicians. And when they hit their 40s, they started to come into their own. It might have been a struggle in their 20s and 30s, but the time they were in their 40s and 50s, life was good. And it turns out everything I learned was wrong. That the riskiest thing you can do is to play it safe. And the safest thing you can do is to start to take the risks. And the third thing you can learn from all of this is change. Change happens. Can you imagine this 15-year-old boy on the phone thinking that sometime in the future, not only would he be talking on the phone, he'd be watching films, movies on the phone, listening to music, creating content with his phone and sharing it with the entire world? Do you think that boy could know that? Do you think that kid with the dark curly hair would think that one day he'll be an old bald man standing on a stage in Riga? Because that kid was me. I never thought I would be here. That's insane. But I can tell you, change is a constant. It is what is going to happen. And now we see change accelerating. So a few years ago, I really took this on board. I started thinking about things. I started thinking about what's around us now. Certainly there's more around us than our 5 senses can detect. We all know that. But biological evolution is very slow. It won't give us what we know exists around us. It's cruel. It gives us and every other species just enough to survive and no more. The problem is we live outside of biological evolution. I don't use my eyes to see if there's a bear coming across the grass there that's going to attack me. I'm not tasting my food to see if it's poisonous. I'm using my taste because I enjoy food. I'm using my eyes to watch a film. I'm using my ears to listen to music, not for danger. We live outside of biological evolution, so it's time we change. So I started a company last year called the Cyborg Nest. We thought we could start to intelligently design new senses for humans. Last year, on December 14th, I had 2 titanium rods permanently inserted into my chest, and I attached this circuit board. I don't know if anyone can see that out there. I attached a circuit board with over 200 components, and now I have a new sense, the sense of the electromagnetic field of the planet. Funny that this event is all about magnetic Riga, because that is what I feel now, the magnetic field of the planet, which kind of goes over my shoulder here, and it's constantly giving me feedback. It's important to know that this is not a tool. If I want a tool, I can pull out a compass and know where north is. This is a sense. It's giving me information about the world I live in, whether I ask for it or not. When I'm finished talking, you don't take your ears off and put them in your pockets. They're always on, always receiving information. Even when you're asleep, your ears are still attached and still taking in information. And this is what defines a sense. So let's do a quick thought experiment with the audience, all right? So you have your 5 senses. You're sitting there, you're standing in there, all right? Now let's start to take away your senses one at a time. We take away your hearing and your smell and your taste and your sight and your touch. You're still there, right? You have your brain, you have your intellect, you have your memories. but could you connect with me? Could you have any connection with me? Could you have any connection with the environment around you? You have no senses. But now we start to put them back in. We give you some hearing, so now you can hear me. Oh, okay, now I have a little bit of connection, and I can smell the air around me and even taste things. And we give you back your sight, and you can see me on this stage, and your touch, and you can feel yourself in this place. But what if we didn't stop at 5? What if we gave you a 6th sense? Would you then have a deeper connection with the people around you, the people in your lives, and the environment you exist in? The answer is yes, I know it. And after me, you're going to see Moon Rebus. And she is an inspiring, amazing person. And trust me, by having more senses, you do have a deeper connection with the people in your lives and the environment you live in. So, to prove my point, I thought it wouldn't be good enough if I just had the north sense. That's what I call this sense, the north sense. So I had it inserted on December 14th, and my business partner, Liviu Babitz, he had it at the same time. There were now 2 of us that had this sense. Amazing, but not good enough. We had to prove it. Could we get 10, 12 people in the world to give this a shot? Would somebody be willing to shove a couple of titanium rods in their chest and attach a circuit board? If we could get 10 people, we would prove our point that this was the future. We didn't get 10 people. We launched on February of 2017, and instead of getting 10 people, we had 200 people sign up and do this. We had a couple of doctors, lawyers, university professors, software designers, the bass player for Lynyrd Skynyrd, if any of you know that band from America, Sweet Home Alabama. Trust me. And we even had an astronaut. These are the people doing it. Not kids that have tattoos and piercings, but people that understand, I want to know more about the future. I want to feel something different. And where do we go from here? Once we have senses, what you'll start to see is people creating things for senses. You have hearing, so we make music, headphones, speakers, things so that you can hear. Imagine you get an iPhone, and all of a sudden people say, well, if you have an iPhone, people can create apps for people that have iPhones. What more can you do with it? Imagine a film. You've all seen Titanic, right? I'm flying. You can watch this film. It's quite amazing-ish. And you could also watch it in black and white. If you watch the film in black and white, you would still see the actors, follow the story, have all the emotion. But if it was in color, how much richer would the experience of the movie be? So now imagine people start designing for people with new senses. So for me, instead of seeing it in black and white or color, as I'm watching the film, I actually feel the orientation of the characters. When she's leaning over the front of the boat, I actually know that she's leaning and facing west. I feel it inside of me. I understand it at a much deeper level. Think about somebody puts a photo up on Instagram. You can see it with your eyes, but maybe I could understand the orientation. And this is where we go with it. Once we have new senses, things will be created around those senses. So I'm going to leave you with a few questions, because I know a lot of people are talking about things like artificial intelligence and algorithms. If anyone uses Instagram or Facebook or Spotify, you know all about that world. I mean, over here is this VR thing where you can get on the bicycle and have a virtual reality experience of that. It's quite extraordinary what we're able to do today with technology. So my question is very simple. If we're spending so much money and so much time and so much effort to make our phones smarter, to make our homes smarter, our cars smarter, our computers smarter. Why aren't we investing the same amount of time and energy and money to make humans smarter, to make us better? One day, every one of you will become cyborgs. Trust me. Maybe when I started, you think I was crazy for making that statement. But if you look around today, there's people with cochlear implants. There's people with pacemakers. There's people with insulin pumps. They are part machine and part human. They are cyborgs. But why should we only use this technology to bring us to zero, to level? Why can't we use it to expand who we are as people and have a much deeper connection with the people in our lives and the environment around us? Thank you very much.